Let's jump right into something absolutely foundational, yet honestly, deeply fascinating in digital logic design: finite state machines, or FSMs. Whether we're talking about communication protocols, the control unit in your processor, or embedded systems, FSMs are the invisible engines running the whole show. So let's dive into this explainer and demystify the logic powering our digital world.
To really get FSMs, we have to start with a fundamental problem. How does a computer actually remember the past? I mean, basic combinational logic only knows what's happening at this exact nanosecond. It's got zero memory. But to do anything remotely useful, a system absolutely has to remember previous events to make future decisions. And that is exactly where finite state machines come in. Beneath the plastic and metal of literally every modern semiconductor platform, inside the physical silicon driving your smartphone, or even a massive supercomputer, FSMs are acting as the localized brains. They're the blueprint that gives a chip the ability to follow a sequence, execute commands over time, and operate with an actual purpose instead of just randomly reacting.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover the need for memory, blueprinting the machine, Moore versus Mealy FSMs, engineering trade-offs, FSMs in the real world, and finally, from theory to silicon. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The need for memory. Giving circuits a past.
To really grasp this, we need to look at two competing paradigms. First, combinational logic. This acts strictly on the present, outputting a result based only on current inputs. The second the inputs changes, poof, the previous state is gone forever. But sequential circuits, they introduce a massive paradigm shift: memory elements. This means the system responds not just to what's happening right now, but crucially to the stored state of past inputs.
Right here, we're looking at the literal physical components doing that job: CMOS circuits for latches and flip-flops. Using a clever arrangement of transistors and feedback loops, these tiny circuits actually trap and hold a voltage level, a 1 or a 0. They are the fundamental building blocks. Basically, without these literal memory components holding onto a state, a finite state machine just couldn't exist.
Section 2. Blueprinting the machine, visualizing state.
So how do we map this all out? Well, the primary tool is the state diagram. It's essentially a directed graph. You've got nodes, usually drawn as circles, representing the specific states the machine can be in. Then the arrows connecting them show the transitions, how we move from one state to another. And those arrows are labeled with the specific input and output conditions needed to trigger that move. For an engineer, this is your primary design artifact.
Let's look at a concrete example to see how this builds. This beautifully illustrates a sequence detector designed to spot the binary pattern 101. Okay, we start at the top at S0, our idle state. If we get a 1, we follow the arrow down to S1. We've now remembered the first piece of our sequence. If we then get a 0, we travel to S2. Finally, if we get another 1, we drop right into S3. And at S3, the machine successfully outputs a 1, signaling it found the sequence. Notice how at every single state, there's a clear arrow telling the machine what to do if it gets the wrong input, seamlessly resetting the logic. It's basically a perfect visual math of the system's brain.
But those abstract circles and arrows have to be translated into actual mathematical rigor, right? That's where the state transition table comes in. Say our present state is S2 and input X is 1. Our next state is S3. Engineers use this exact grid to derive Carnot maps, and from those they figure out the precise mathematical equations needed to actually wire up the flip-flops we saw earlier.
Section 3. Moore versus Mealy FSMs. Two distinct personalities.
First up is the Moore machine. Now with Moore, outputs depend only on the current state. It completely ignores current inputs. Because of this, outputs change synchronously with state transitions. You can think of the Moore machine as the thoughtful personality. It waits for the clock, updates its state, and then synchronously updates its output. It's highly stable, and most importantly, glitch-free.
Contrast that with the Mealy machine. Look really closely at the routing here. The output depends on both the present state and the current input directly. The inputs bypass the state register entirely and feed straight into the output combinational logic. This gives the Mealy machine a fast, reflex-like personality. It reacts immediately to an input change, sometimes within the very same clock cycle. But that speed comes with a danger. Because the output is tied directly to the raw input, any asynchronous noise or rapid changes on that input line can cause nasty glitches in your output.
Section 4. Engineering trade-offs. Choosing your machine.
So let's weigh the trade-offs. The Moore machine, it gives you that synchronous, glitch-free safety, but it usually requires more states and takes up more physical chip area. The Mealy machine, on the other hand, gives you lightning-fast, immediate responses and fewer states, but at a much higher risk of combinational glitches. It's the classic engineering balancing act of speed versus stability.
So what's the industry rule of thumb? It boils down to this. If you're generating control signals where a tiny glitch could crash your entire system, you use a Moore machine. Safety first, always. But if you're designing a latency-critical data path where literally every nanosecond counts, you use a Mealy machine to get that immediate response.
Section 5. FSMs in the real world, from chips to streets.
Let's look inside modern processors, like the ARM chip in your phone or the Intel chip in your laptop. Here, FSMs act as the ultimate traffic cops. Actually, fun fact for you, a single modern processor can easily contain tens of thousands of individual interacting FSMs. That's wild, right? The processor control units use them to orchestrate incredibly complex fetch, decode, execute pipelines. Every single time your CPU predicts a branch of code or pauses to manage a data hazard, an FSM is rapidly cycling through its states to keep the data flowing without a catastrophic collision.
For hardware developers writing in languages like Verilog or VHDL, these exact FSM concepts synthesize directly into physical silicon. On complex boards like Xilinx or Intel FPGAs, the synthesizer software actually reads those state tables we talked about earlier and physically maps them into lookup tables or LUTs and flip-flops. So the abstract theory literally becomes a physical, tangible circuit.
But FSMs aren't just stuck inside computers. Think about an intersection with a traffic light. This is a classic embedded control system. A traffic controller absolutely cannot afford glitches. I mean, if it accidentally flashes green in all directions for a millisecond because of a noisy sensor, the results are disastrous. And this is exactly why safety-critical embedded systems rely heavily on the stable, synchronous, glitch-free outputs of a Moore FSM. It waits, it verifies, and it changes states safely.
Section 6, From Theory to Silicon, the Implementation Flow.
This visual flow maps perfectly to the RTL, Register Transfer Level Synthesis process. It's the complete journey from a blank whiteboard specification all the way down to a gate-level netlist of physical wires and transistors. It just goes to show that no matter how ridiculously complex the final microchip is, the design process follows a very logical, highly structured path.
All right, here is the exact 4-step mental model I want you to walk away with today. Step 1, define what states your system actually needs to exist in. Step 2, draw the state diagram to map out the visual flow and transitions. Step 3, convert that drawing into a mathematical state transition table. And finally, Step 4, implement the logic, deriving the equations to wire up your flip-flops and logic gates. Follow those 4 steps, and you have officially built a brain for your circuit.
We've gone from the core problem of a circuit's memory all the way to mapping logic into physical silicon, balancing the thoughtful Moore against the rapid Mealy along the way. You now understand the fundamental language of how digital hardware remembers, decides, and acts. So, I'll leave you with this final thought. Now that you know exactly how the machine thinks, what sequence will you design it to detect next?